Hello Facebook, hello YouTube. What's up everybody? This is Ruben and I'm back with another Ruben Report. Today I wanted to do a short UET update, Ultimate Endurance Test update. This will be number 3. And before we get started into all of that, I wanted to show you guys what miles we're at so it can be documented. So we are currently at 4,078.3 miles. That means we are officially at 1,800 miles, give or take, on the brand new engine, and about 1,300 miles since the valve adjustment. And performance wise, the bike has been running absolutely flawlessly. I have not had any issues, any symptoms of the valves tightening up yet. I have power on tap. MPG performance has been just fine. Idles just fine. Doesn't stall or do any of the, this typical symptoms of valves being too tight. So it's been great. Today I want to talk a little bit more about kind of my strategy from here on out, mainly because for the past week I've been very closely monitoring the bike and how it performs in different scenarios. And the data that I have found, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. it may actually be more beneficial for me to ride this bike on the highway, even though I get lower MPG. It may actually be more beneficial for me to ride this bike to work on the highway than it is on the back roads. Okay, and I'm gonna explain to you why here in a moment. So from the data that I've been collecting, riding on the highway, I generally get anywhere between 50 to 51, sometimes even really high 40s, like 49.1, 49.2. I mean, that's if I'm riding kind of crazy or trying to really push it, which I generally don't. Riding on the highways, my strategy on riding on the highways is I generally keep the RPMs at 7,500 and 8,000 or 8,300. That basically keeps me right between 60 miles an hour GPS all the way to 65 miles an hour GPS. I can go faster. I just don't want to flirt with red line. I just want to stay in between that 7,500 to 8,000 RPM range, and I don't mind riding slow. So riding at that speed or in those RPMs, yeah, the bike in the past week has been getting pretty much 50 to 51 MPG. Okay. Now, riding on the back roads, you guys already know the absolute best MPG I've ever gotten was 59.7. So we still haven't hit the 60 miles to the gallon just yet. But riding on the back roads, I don't always get 59 MPG. It's been quite sporadic, mainly because riding on the back roads, there's a lot of different variables. When I'm riding in comparison to when I'm riding on the highway, there's lots of different lanes, ample space. I generally stay on the right hand lane if I'm riding on the highway, but if there is a truck in front of me that I'm slowly creeping up on, no worries. I just lane split and I pass them up slowly but surely, and I get right back into the right hand lane and go about my business. On the back roads, however, it's only a 2-lane road, and that's one lane going each way. And so if I want to pass somebody, I have to plan for it very carefully, and I really have to give her some gas to get past a truck safely, because I don't want to be in oncoming traffic. So, and then there's train tracks, lots of stops, So stop and go, red lights, things of that nature. So there's some variables there. And on an optimal day where everything goes perfect, yes, I get 59 miles to the gallon. But when it comes to a typical everyday type of situation, I'm closer to 56, 57, 55, depends. And with that being said, I've been keeping closer eye not just on the MPG numbers, but also on the amount of gallons that I'm actually using. Because the main difference between riding on the highway versus riding on the back roads is the distance that's traveled. Back and forth from my job is 25 miles if I ride on the highway versus the back roads, which is 30 miles. So 60 miles altogether, or 50 miles altogether. And my findings over the past week, it may actually be more advantageous to ride on the freeway with this bike than it is to ride on the back roads. And here we're going to go ahead and break down all the numbers here in just a moment.
Alright guys, so here we have both routes and all their data points plotted on this sheet here so we can compare the two. Starting with the highway, and mind you, I've always been using 87 octane gas, mainly because I've already done an MPG performance test in my MPG experiments series. I tested the bike with 91 octane to see if that would contribute to better gas mileage, and it just didn't. So again, knowing that my goal is to maximize fuel efficiency, knowing that 87 octane, 91 octane has no difference, I just use 87 octane because it's cheaper, obviously. And even if it was true that 91 octane actually did give me a little bit better gas mileage, maybe 1 or 2, it's still not enough to justify the much higher price for the higher octane gas. So I use 87 octane gas, and right now 87 octane gas is $5.89 in my area, or at the gas station that I usually fill up the bike at. But anyway, riding on the highway, I get between 50 and 51 mpg. Riding on the highway exclusively to go back and forth from work, that'll be 50 miles a day, 250 miles a week. You getting this type of gas mileage riding on the highway would average to about 4.9 to 5 gallons of gas used a week. Okay, in comparison to my actual route that I've always been using, which is the back roads, again, it's been sporadic because there's a lot of different variables when it comes to the back roads. We have train stops, we have red lights, we have stoplights, we have one lane roads, or 2-lane roads, really, one going in each direction. So if there's a truck that's in front of me, well, I have to plan to get around it, and I have to get around it very quickly. So my riding there's quite a few variables, and that's why my MPG has been quite sporadic and can swing from 54 MPG all the way up to 59 MPG, just depending on the type of riding that I do. But regardless, 60 miles a day, 300 miles a week, and with this swing, that would average to 5.08 gallons all the way up to 5.5 unending gallons a week. Okay, so looking specifically at the gallons used, we see here, even though the MPG is lower using the highway route, I use less gallons. And even if I was to get the absolute best MPG that I've ever gotten every single day, it's still higher than my worst MPG that I would be using on the highway, as far as gallons used is concerned. So with that amount of money, it comes out to an average for the highway route about $28.86 to $29.45 a week, versus what I've been paying already, $29.92 to $32.72 a week, in between there. Okay. In reality, I've been closer to about 31 and some change. Looking at my actual budget and what I've actually been spending as far as gas is concerned. Then we have a month, $115.44 to $117.80 versus $119.68 all the way up to $130.88. And I can tell you right now, from this month alone, the month is pretty much over now, and I've definitely spent 100 and almost closer to 140. Obviously, I use my bike for a lot more than just going back and forth from work, but still, the numbers speak for itself. So, seeing just the raw data here, I can save on average about $10, maybe even $15. Just depends. I can go from 10 to 15. It swings. I mean, about $2 to $15 is what can be saved a month, which isn't much, but it's still something to note. It's noteworthy. But riding on the highway versus riding the back roads, I mean, it's not strictly just numbers. On the highway, I would be riding anywhere between 60 to 65 miles per hour GPS, which will definitely be at much higher RPMs than my already, semi-high RPMs that I'm riding on the back roads with. So hovering more around 7,500, 8,200 RPMs, in between there, just depends on whether I have to pass, what's in front of me, what's not. That's on the highway. I'm staying in between there. Back roads, again, once I actually start cruising, I get to 7,000 RPMs and I just stay there. And all the stops and starts and red lights or whatever else in between, those are just interruptions. But once I'm actually cruising, this is where I'm cruising at. I don't go any faster than this. And again, unless I'm actually passing someone. So it's all brief moments of either slower or faster speeds, but this is a more constant speed. And I guess pros and cons of each route. Going on the highway, it's definitely a lot quicker. It's about 10-15 minutes quicker, maybe even 20 minutes quicker, especially if I don't have to wait for a train. It's shorter, obviously. I don't put as many miles on a bike, and cheaper overall route to take. However, it is definitely a lot less safe for me as a rider, and also potentially for the bike. This is going to be the ultimate endurance test after all. Will it be able to stand up to that type of use every single day? I mean, we'll see. Now, riding on the back roads, as I've always been doing, I'm not gonna lie, it's more scenic, it's more relaxing, and definitely a much more safer route. There isn't much traffic, There are definitely people on the back roads who drive on the back roads, but it's not that much. And there's also those days where I sometimes don't run into hardly anyone. But it is definitely a much longer route, and as we can see with the numbers, it costs a lot more gas overall. Well, so looking at this data, it's a lot to consider.
So seeing that data, I mean, numbers can't lie. All right. The amount of, but I also have to throw in this argument. Riding on the highway, there's definitely some concerns that I have there, and riding on the back roads, well, it's really just a numbers game. But knowing that my goal is to save as much money on gas as possible with this ridiculous gas prices that we're having right now, I'm leaning more towards riding the bike on the highway. But let me know what you guys think, because riding this bike on the highway, or really me riding the bike how I ride it now, is already, well, I wouldn't really say pushing it, but it's up there. I mean, 7,000 RPMs every day, it's quite a bit. But if we actually start riding on the highway with this bike, now we're cooking with grease, all right? I mean, shoot, it's the ultimate endurance test. Might as well, full send it. We're for real are going to be riding at 7,500 or 8,000, closer to 8,000 RPMs every single day. So if we're going to be doing ultimate endurance test, well, this is it. The bike will for real be riding at 8,000 RPMs. Not for 5,000 miles, but for 50 miles every day. Let me know what you guys think. All right. Thanks for watching. See y'all later. Bye-bye.